time for another Psalm 119 discussion and another opportunity for you to learn another wonderful dessert. Okay, whoops. So, if you're not familiar, I'm Dr. Tracy Dickens. I'm a licensed psychologist, and this year I am going through Psalm 119, just unpacking it 8-line stanza at a time. And this is our 10th, yes, our 10th installment to this series. And it's a redo. I did it a couple of weeks ago, and the camera somehow when I was setting everything up, and it was just facing the wall. So I'm redoing it. And this time I know it's facing me because I can see me. So, anyway, I'm excited about this one. Like I said, it's the 10th installment. We're going to be talking about verses 73 through 80. And the lovely recipe that we are sharing today is a strawberry sorbet called Eve. If you've been around, you know that I give all of my luscious desserts a name from a person in the Bible. And this one is called Eve. But as always, before we get started, I want to pray us in and then we will get going. Okay. Dear God, thank you once again for bringing us together. Thank you for the people that will hear this or see this. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing to you. I pray that our hearts and our eyes are open so we can receive, understand, and correct any misinformation that we have about you, and that we love others as you command. And this is not for ourselves, but for your glory and for our restoration. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so like I said, today we're doing a strawberry sorbet. I don't know when you might be seeing this, but this is taking place in the middle of July. Well, early July, not even the middle yet. But I'm in Texas and it is hot. And I feel like that's an understatement. I went to the gym earlier and just walking to the gym, I broke out in a sweat. And that was at 8 o'clock in the morning. Yes, I broke out in a sweat at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's hot out there, y'all. So if you're like me, I don't really like turning on the oven or the stove if I don't have to. So I try and find yummy, delicious foods to eat that don't use that too much or don't use it at all. And that's what we have here today. We have strawberry sorbet. And I also thought it was just great because I know a lot of people have planted gardens and maybe you're starting to get your fresh fruits, your first fruits, and whatever berries you have, you absolutely can use this. I'm just using strawberry because I like strawberry sorbet, but you can use another berry. But speaking of strawberries, some things that people may not know about strawberries, because I like to give you some little facts, little tips. Strawberries actually have more vitamin C than oranges. I know, who would have thunk, right? But they do, which means they have great antioxidants, great immunity support. Also, because of that great immunity support, it also helps your heart. It's great for heart health. It reduces your LDL, which is that bad cholesterol that we don't like, and it also reduces triglycerides. And lowers your blood pressure. Another great thing about strawberries, even though if you get them in season and they are chef's kiss sweet, they actually don't spike your blood sugar. So if you are somebody who has diabetes, strawberry sorbet might be right up your alley. And then one last thing, because of all the immunity support and the heart health and not spiking the blood sugar and all those great things, this also means that it is great for your brain health and it reduces inflammation in your body. So, it's win-win. This is basically a vitamin in yummy form, right? So let's get going. I'm going to I just have a small food processor. The recipe will always be in the description. And I have about 2 cups worth of frozen strawberries. If you get fresh strawberries, just make sure that you freeze them. And then I took them out about 30 minutes ago so they could get a little soft so they blend a little easier in the food processor. You can use a high-speed blender or a food processor, whichever one you want to use. The idea is just to get it to where it's, like a sorbet. It's smooth and creamy. So while I'm putting this in my little handy dandy KitchenAid here, I want to talk about Eve. If you are not familiar with who Eve is, have you been living under a rock? Maybe. She is the wife of Adam. And I'm just going to put some of these in here until they start blending down, and then I'll put the others in. So, like I said, she's the wife of Adam. They were in the Garden of Eden. First man and woman, husband and wife. And let me set this on. And okay, that's in there. And Eve is the one who ate from the tree. Well, she's the one that had the conversation with the infamous conversation with the serpent and ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the Bible doesn't say that that fruit was an apple, but for whatever reason, we always say it's an apple, but we don't really know. Well, I bet if I actually looked it up, we probably do know. But there's no proof that it was an apple. Let's put it that way. Let's put it that way. I'll say that. Okay. So in a little bit, once I get this kind of squished down a little bit, I am going to add my liquid so it really starts to puree. I just want to kind of break it up a little bit. I'm trying to think. So the thing that, mixing. So the thing that kind of pulled me into making the strawberry sorbet, because my desserts always have some kind of connection with what we're talking about today. So Adam and Eve. Eve was said to be Adam's helpmate, and a lot of people use that word incorrectly. It's a word that's used several times in the Bible. Oftentimes, it comes up with the Holy Spirit being a helpmate. Jesus uses it when he talks about the Spirit coming down. And it's really this idea that you have a helper that is equal to you and support you, much like strawberries. They support a healthy body. Huh? See how I did that? I know, right? So again, love strawberries, and I love that they are great at supporting a healthy body, just like the Holy Spirit is great at supporting us have a healthy spiritual life. And so it just made sense to bring all these lovely things together. So now in here, I have 1/4 of a cup of maple syrup and 1/4 of a cup of oat milk. Now, you don't have to use the milk. I use it because I just like it adds a creaminess. It adds this mouthfeel that I just prefer over just the sorbet and the maple syrup. You don't even have to use maple syrup. You can use whatever sweetener that you feel comfortable with. If you're somebody that has diabetes, you might want to use something like stevia or something that won't spike your blood sugar to stay in line with the strawberries. But whatever you feel comfortable with, you can put it in here. So I'm just going to pour that in. Like I said, it's 1/4 of a cup of maple syrup and 1/4 of a cup of oat milk. You don't have to use the oat milk. That's my preference. I've made it without and with, and I just like the smoothness of it with. And then I'm going to put, this is citric acid. If you're wondering where I got it from Amazon. I can't remember how much it cost because I bought it a while ago. So the original recipe calls for lemon juice. And if you don't know, my recipes are migraine friendly. I've had a year of a migraine episode that I'm trying to heal from. And so lemons are known to be a migraine trigger, but I can have citric acid in small doses. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to put 3/4 of a teaspoon because you do really want that citrusy kind of flavor because it does add a little more depth to the sorbet. I mean, obviously you don't have to. If you don't have lemons, if you don't have citric acid, it'll still be a great, yummy dessert. But just know it's a little bit better when you have it. Let's look at that. It's mixing up. So I want to know, since it's summertime, at least here in the US, what is your favorite summertime desserts? So put it down there in the bottom in the description. In the comments. Let me know. We're almost done. We're almost done. Da 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 da. So you're just trying to get it to be this really great smooth consistency, which I think it is what I'm wanting. I can show that to you. Kind of see how that looks. It's just kind of smooth. It looks like all the lumps are out. And if you ever had ice cream or sorbet, you're kind of going for that consistency, right? Where it just looks smooth. Maybe a little bit more, but I really think we're good to go. Okay, then I have my handy dandy container here, and I'm just gonna scoop this up and put this in here and let it freeze. Oh, look at that. See, it's already nice and cold. Like I said, if you're working with fresh strawberries, I would definitely freeze them for at least 2 to 3 hours. And if you're working with fresh strawberries and you're freezing them, you probably don't then need to leave them out for 30 minutes. But if you're working with frozen strawberries, like I was working with, then you definitely want to give them about 30 minutes head start to thaw so you can mix them in your blender a little bit easier. And then you just scoop it all out and put it in a container, and then you put it in your freezer, and you have a delicious sorbet or sherbet, however you want to. I know there's a difference between the two, and I'm not sure what the difference is. Again, I'm sure that's something I could find out with Google. So I'm intrigued to find out what your favorite summertime desserts are. I definitely like sorbet. I'm not a huge ice cream person. I get excited about ice cream, and then I'll eat tons of it, and then I'm done. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm done. We're good. So, I don't know what that's about. So now I'm going to put it in the freezer. Get it all. There we are. I put it in the freezer, let it hang out. And then later on, after dinner, I have a lovely little treat that won't mess up my. You know what? I didn't even taste it. Here, I'm going to get a little taste. That is delicious. Oh my gosh, that makes my heart happy. I'm going to stick these over here in the sink. I will clean those later. You guys don't need to watch me clean. I'm just going to kind of prep it some. Let's see here. Let me move this over here. Move this away. So let me clean this off really quick. So I'm also curious about, since it's summertime, we just had July 4th here, and I'm wondering, since lots of celebrations and lots of vacations started, so I'm wondering what vacations you might be planning this summer or in the near months. I am not going on vacation. I possibly will have a friend visiting, which is always good. My vestibular disorder kind of keeps me at home, so not much venturing out right now. But when I'm better, the world better be. They're not prepared for when I'm better. I'm going to be all over the place. I'm going to be out and about. Okay, that is good. Let me wash my hands here. And then we will start talking about Psalm 119, verses 73 through 80, which is the 10th letter in the alphabet, which is Yod. And it's also the smallest character in the Hebrew alphabet. Ooh, that's loud. It looks, in the English language, it looks like an apostrophe. So it's a little hook that says that there's a part of the letters missing or shows possession. And whenever you see it, whenever you see that particular letter, it represents confidence in the law, hand, or spark. It represents divine action, omnipresence, and humility. And because it's the smallest of the letters, but it represents this divine action, this omnipresence, people often think of it as the symbol of there's greatness to be found in modesty, right? Something so small that you may want to count out is actually quite powerful, which I like the idea of that. So let me read the verses so you know what we are going to be discussing today. Okay, I'm going to take a drink of water, wet the whistle, pull up my chair. Oh, let me take this off. I started not to wear one of these, but then I thought, yeah, right. You're going to be messing with strawberries and not wear an apron. I thought that would be completely bad idea. So I'm going to set this over here for now. Oh, let me pull this over here too. I have a visual aid today. Okay, so Psalm 119, verses 73 through 80. This is the NASB translation. Your hands made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I may learn your commandments. May those who fear you see me and be glad, because I wait for your word. I know, O Lord, that your judgments are righteous, and that in faithfulness you have afflicted me. Oh, may your loving kindness comfort me, according to your word to your servant. May your compassion come to me that I may live, for your law is my light, is my delight. May the arrogant be ashamed, for they subvert me with a lie. But I shall meditate on your precepts. May those who fear you turn to me, even those who know your testimonies. May my heart be blameless in your statutes, so that I will not be ashamed. Okay, so those are the verses. So as with all things, when I'm looking at the verses, I will look for repetition. I will look for how the verses are kind of structured. If I see, okay, there's certain wording and there's kind of the structure, how the verses kind of fit together. And so one of the things that stood out to me when I was looking at it across different translations is the word let. It shows up 4 times. This idea of, allowing, you know, um, like may those who fear you, like lit those who fear you. Oh, may your lit your loving kindness. Like you see this show up several times, and it's this recognition of I know that action is needed by you, that this is not something that's up to me, that you're in control here, and I'm asking for you to enter into the situation. And then the other thing I noticed about these verses is that there's 3 sections. God made us to know him. God tests us so we trust him, and God afflicts us so we can have a blameless life. So, C.S. Lewis has this great quote that I just love this quote and thought, yes, absolutely, we're going to put it in here. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. It's the megaphone to rouse a deaf world. So these verses are about affliction and how God uses discipline to express his love. Sometimes when you talk about other verses that are about affliction, and those verses tend to be more about how just the world being a world of sin and wickedness, how we will experience pains. But this really kind of captures this idea of sometimes the affliction that we're experiencing is purposeful from God, and there's a purpose to it. It's not just to be cruel or harsh, but it is to develop us into the person He has designed us to be. And when I was looking at these verses, it very much so made me think about a pottery class that I took. I've been wanting to take a pottery class for a long time. I love creative things and making pottery, the whole wheel and the water and the clay, all that has been a bucket list item. And last year for my birthday, that's what my dad got for me, a class for making pottery. And this is what I made. I think it's amazing. First time ever. Even my instructor was amazed. She asked me, "Are you sure you've never done this before?" And I said, "No, I've never done it before." And she says, "Well, you need to be somebody making pottery." I think she's being generous. She was a really great instructor. But during the process of making this pottery, it became very clear to me all of the scriptures that are used as a metaphor of God being the potter and us being the clay. Because as I was sitting there with the lump of clay on the little spinner, I know there's a correct word for this and I can't remember. Again, I've had a year of migraines, my brain's like, ooh. Um, but as the clay was on there and it was spinning, and she was just teaching me how to, how to hold the clay. And that time, sometimes I had to speed up the wheel, sometimes I had to slow it down, sometimes I had to put pressure, sometimes I had to put the pressure in just the right places to create the shape that I wanted. And so there was all of this awareness of there's a specificity. Huh? Wait, huh? There are, it's not just haphazard. Let's put it that way. That when you're touching the clay and it's moving, you're not just sitting there touching the clay. There's purpose with the thought in mind of what you want this vessel to do. What is this thing that you're creating? What's its purpose? Is it going to be a platter? Is it going to be a bowl? Is it going to be uh, a glass or a jar? Like, what is its purpose? And then, with that in mind, let me apply the pressure and the water that's needed to create that thing that I have a vision for. And so, it's very purposeful. So, again, it's not just slap some clay on there and do whatever, it's very intentional, very purposeful. And this is true of God. When God is making each of us, He has a vision in mind about who He wants us to be. And that vision requires Him to sometimes put pressure in certain places. Sometimes it's light pressure, sometimes it's heavier pressure, sometimes it's a pressing down, sometimes it's a shaping with His fingers. But there's all these little intricate details that He's doing to take this clay and create something that serves a purpose, right? It's a vessel, it's meant to carry something, to present something, just like you and I, right? We are meant to carry His image, we're meant to present His word and His values, His glory, His holiness, His righteousness to a broken world. And He knows how we need to look in order to carry and present those very things. So, like I said, that requires pressure and it requires changes in speed and all these things. And so, this kind of brings us to verse 74 when um, the psalmist is saying, may those who fear you see me and be glad because I wait for your word. Right? And so, oh, wait, before I go to 74, let me look at 73. 73, your hands made me and fashioned me, right? Like you see that, right? And give me understanding that I may learn your commandments. That He's the only one that can give us an understanding of what's happening to us when we're being shaped. He's the only one that can give us understanding of His word and His promises and His faithfulness, that this is not just done in a haphazard way to be cruel or harsh, but it's intentional. There is love behind it, there is a vision behind it. And the psalmist knows that you created me, and because you created me, you know exactly who I'm supposed to be, and you're the only one that can give me understanding of that. And then we get to the next verse where the psalmist is saying, hey, may those who fear you see me and be glad. In other words, when I see other brothers and sisters in Christ, let them recognize me. Let them see my light and I see their light. And we celebrate that. I mean, how many times have you been out and you recognize someone by how they're standing or a shirt that they're wearing or how they talk to someone and you think, we're brothers and sisters in Christ. And what a joy that is to see another believer out in the world, living life and presenting in a way that glorifies God. And that's what the psalmist is talking about. It's like, hey, allow me to present in the world that others that see me know that I belong to you and they want to draw near. So develop that in me. And then we get to verse 75. I know, O Lord, that your judgments are righteous and that faithfulness you have afflicted me. Okay. The psalmist understands the connection with others and reminds him of the character of God. And in that connection with others, he knows that there are going to be times that he's going to judge our actions. And judgment, I used to have this idea about judgment as being this very cruel thing, but judgment at the heart of it is really about discerning light from dark. Because a lot of us can be doing things that look good, but God can judge our heart with our true motivation behind that. Is that to get people to like us? Are we people pleasing? Are we not doing things or doing things because of fear of man? Are we doing it out of the love of God, out of the fear of God? And not fear like I'm afraid he's going to hurt me, but a fear meaning I'm fearful of being separated from you because you're my everything. And so I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. So it's that he's looking for. And he can discern that. He can discern the truth of that. His judgments are doing that. Is this something of light or dark? And like, when we get to the judgment seat, he's going to be able to determine which of our works were for him and which of our works were for the world. And the ones that are for the world get tossed out, right? He can do that. And so the psalmist recognizes that when he's doing that, he's trying to identify where we are in our maturity and our development and the affliction that comes, it's coming from a place of faithfulness. Think of all the promises where he's talking about, I know the plans I have for you, and the scriptures about us maturing in our faith. And he is recognizing, okay, this is an area that needs a little bit of pressure, that needs to be a little faster, that I need to put my finger in here so it goes deeper. Like he's recognizing, okay, I'm going to be faithful to my promise to create you into a vessel that's glorifying to me. And it may hurt, but the purpose is to stay faithful to the promise that I made, that I have plans for you. And I'm going to continue forward until those plans are brought forth. And when you think about this, sometimes we think, oh, this sounds, yucky. But if you have been around children or if you are a parent of a child, you know that you have to discipline your children, right? I mean, you're aware of that. And Hebrews 12:10 says, God disciplines for our good. So we share in his holiness. And so think about the child that doesn't get disciplined. They're running around the house. You don't correct them running around the house. You don't have them learn how to clean their room and how to steward their things well. You don't have them check in with you. You just let them run out in the street and just do whatever and hang out with anybody and everybody. How do you think that child is going to grow up if there's no boundaries, there's no discipline, there's no correction? And this child has your name, right? And so this child has your name and you don't discipline them and they run around any old kind of way. You wouldn't stand for that, right? I mean, I hope you wouldn't stand for it. You discipline because you want that child to grow up and function well in the world and contribute good things in the world. Well, the same is true for God. And I think sometimes we think that God is good means he gives us whatever we want and lets us do whatever we want. But that would never fly with a parent and a child. God operates very much so with a similar kind of mindset. We are his children and he wants the best for us. And we are carrying his name. And so he is going to discipline us because he loves us. It's not cruelty. He wants us to go into the world and function well and represent him well. So, okay, I know. I mean, who likes to be disciplined? But when you have that relationship, right? And I think that's the key. When you have the relationship with the parent and they're disciplining you, you get it. I remember when my goddaughter used to come around a lot and she would break a rule and I would discipline her. I would remind her of the rule and I would hold her to the expectation of meeting that standard. And she would get mad and she would cry. And I would tell her, it's okay that you can be mad. I mean, you have the right to your feelings. Um, and then she would calm down and recognize that she broke the rule. But she knew me well enough to know we spent enough time together. I gave her enough love and compassion and affection and listened to her and loved on her that she knew when I was setting a limit, it wasn't me being suddenly this cruel, awful person. It was me correcting her out of love. And so she would just come up to me later and apologize, and we would go on with our day. And it's that relationship piece. And I think sometimes the people that struggle with the discipline more than likely don't have the relationship to understand what God is doing. So it goes back to that very first verse. You formed me and you can help me understand. And so I'm asking you, what is your relationship like with God? When was the last time he disciplined you? Because if you're not being disciplined, if you're not being corrected, then you probably need to wonder, am I really his? Because he will correct you. When I sit down and read scripture, more often than not, I'm getting convicted. And I think I get convicted the most when I'm around children and I'm correcting them about something. And then he brings something to mind that I have done, much like this child that I'm correcting. So you will know because he will convict you. Convictions are, hey, you're mine, and I'm trying to smooth out these edges. I'm trying to go a little deeper. I'm trying to smooth this out so you can be the vessel that I have in mind for you to be. You got it? So, when was the last time you were disciplined? And how did you respond? Okay, I know it's tough. Okay, so we get to the next verse, verse 77. The psalmist does not ask for the discipline to stop. Instead, he asks for God's mercy to comfort him so that he might endure. Because again, when you have that relationship, you recognize that the discipline is needed to make you better. It's not, it's it's meant to make you better, not to break you, right? Like you understand that and you just ask for his compassion to help you endure it and to steward that affliction well. So it's honoring to him. Um, and I think sometimes, even when we think about compassion, we don't really understand what that word means. It means to come alongside. And so if you're experiencing God's compassion, right, he's coming alongside you, he's carrying that burden with you. Um, and so knowing that when you're in that affliction, you can ask him, it's like, oh my gosh, I know this is for my good, but this is really hurting. And I want to go grab a bag of chips or go to drink, or I want to work extra, or I want to, call my friend and do all the things and just ask him like, okay, help me focus on you and your promises and that this is for my good. And I may not understand it now, but one day I will. And okay, next verse, 78. May the arrogant be ashamed, for they subvert me with a lie. So, as always, whenever we're being disciplined or we're in a season of challenges and difficulties, the devil likes to kick people when they're down. I mean, why not, right? I mean, they're weak. But it's always interesting because if you are really leaning into God in these seasons, you'll be much like Jesus was in when he, came out of the water and the Spirit led him into um, the wilderness to fast for 40 days, and then the devil came along to tempt him. We may think that he's weak, but at that time, he was leaning into God. He was spiritually fed. So if you're doing these things, if you're asking God to step into it and you're understanding him and you're asking him to help you understand, when the arrogant come along and they want to kick you while you're down, and the devil wants to yip yap things in your head like, oh, you're stupid, you're being punished, God doesn't love you, you just go do your own thing. If God won't give it to you, you go get it. When he's yapping in your ear, making you doubt and question, if you are leaning into God, when that starts happening, you'll know, hey, you know what? These are lies, and I'm going to stay true to what I know and to who I know. And you're going to let God handle that piece. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm seriously having a hot flash. I don't know why. I'm going to go grab a napkin. Probably look like I'm just finished running a marathon, and I haven't. So the joys The joys of perimenopause. I have the air down low too. I haven't had a hot flash in forever. Maybe I'm just so excited about the topic. I'm passionate. We'll say that's what's happening. I'm passionate about the topic. Okay. Um, okay. Um, and okay. And something else that I was thinking about when I was studying these verses, I also thought about the verse in 2 Corinthians 12 when Paul is discussing the thorn in his side, and that it's and he discusses it in a way where he knows that it is something that keeps him from exalting himself, and it keeps him humble. It requires him to lean in. And if you remember in the beginning of that, he talks about how this is like a messenger from Satan, right? Like it's a messenger that it is sometimes, it's allowed to happen to humble us, to remind us where our strength comes from, and that we're not in control, but God is. And our focus should be on that, on following his word, recognizing the limits of our flesh, and looking for him to continue to help us endure and to walk through it, because it reminds us of our need for God and his faithfulness and his tender mercies. um, we can't become the vessels he desires without him. We just can't. His pressure and his blessings, um, we need those. So therefore, the last prayer is a plea from the psalmist, is for a heart to be blameless. And Jeremiah 17:9 tells us our heart is more deceitful than anything. And Proverbs 4:23 tells us to guard our heart because it is a source of life. So that very last verse is really bringing us down to, the second to last verse. Well, the last verse and the second to last verse. Um, the last verse, for us to have this blameless heart. We like to justify things. Maybe I'm saying we, and maybe it's just me, but I don't think so. I've been a therapist for quite a long time, and I hear some of the justifications that we make to excuse our behaviors or lack of behavior. We can deceive ourselves in thinking that we are better than we are. And that's one of the things I love about in Isaiah 6, I believe, where Isaiah, when he's in the throne room and he comes face to face with the reality of just how sinful he is. We all fall short from the glory of God, every one of us. I mean, on our best days, our righteous acts are filthy rags. I mean, we just can't do it. Um, and when we recognize the reality of that and we ask God to help us continue to develop into the people that are blameless. And a lot of times we take that verse of guarding our heart to mean, well, I just need to stay away from people. I need to keep people at a distance. And that's not what guarding the heart means. I mean, think about a guard, like what a guard does. They keep their eyes open for anyone that might be trying to enter the facility that might be a threat to the standards, rules, boundaries, expectations of that business, of that home. They are protecting the safety and the boundaries and the rules and the purity of that establishment. That's what guards do. They recognize who can come in and who is a threat and needs to stay out. And so when you think of it like that, now you can start thinking about, okay, what am I listening to? What am I eating? What am I reading? What am I watching? Who am I spending time with? Where am I going? Are these things that are in alignment with God or not? Because if I'm guarding my heart, I'm going to become very aware of what is entering my being, because we're the temple, right? In the New Testament, we're the temple. And what am I allowing into the temple? So, what are you allowing into the temple? And the psalmist is asking God, hey, help me recognize what I'm allowing into the temple so that I will not be ashamed. Because that's exactly what the devil wants you to do. He wants you to just, let anything and everything in, let anybody and everybody in. So then he can shame you. And shame isolates us. It gets us caught up in people pleasing and this like fear of man because we were seeking man's approval instead of God's approval. And we pull away from God. That's exactly what happened with Adam and Eve. There was no shame at the end of chapter 2 in Genesis. And then in chapter 3, after the infamous conversation, there's shame and they're hiding from each other. They're separated from each other. They're covering themselves up. Before, they were totally fine in who they were and how they were in their relationship with God. And now all of a sudden, they're not. And that's very much what the devil wants you to do. So if you don't guard your heart and just let anybody in, well, guess what? You're hiding out, separating from people, and you're covering yourself up, and you are distancing yourself from God. And that's not how it's supposed to be. So, what are you letting into your body? What words are you speaking? What are you thinking about? How do you think about others? How do you think about yourself? All of those things kind of give you some insight as to what you're letting in. And it can be difficult to walk away from those things. I mean, they meet a need. They serve a purpose. It can be difficult to turn away from those things that we enjoy. And sometimes those things aren't necessarily bad things, they're not inherently bad, but yet they're distracting us and they're keeping us from being shaped into the people, into the person that God's wanting us to be, that we're not giving Him opportunity to develop us. And the other thing about pottery, I found out that a master potter, when they're making their vessels, they often use shattered bits of other pottery and they add it to the clay because it makes the clay stronger and it has these little hints of uh, like sparkle. It just gives it an extra texture. It makes it more unique and pretty. And so it's another thing about this idea about affliction, these places where we feel like we've been broken and hurt and harmed. God uses all of that in our design, and it makes us that much more beautiful and stunning and unique. So don't shy away from the process. You don't have to like it. You don't have to like skip through tulips, right? Like we're not going to be fake. It's going to be really hard, but recognize what its purpose is, and that it's meant to build you, not break you, and it's meant to mature you as a Christian. And He knows exactly the pressure that's required to develop you into the vessel that can go out into the world and reflect His image and serve your purpose, which is to glorify Him. So that is all I have for you today. So as always, there's 4 questions. The typical one, what did you learn about God? The second one, where do you see Jesus in these verses? And then how do you think your relationship with God would be if you never experience weakness or trials? And what does it mean to guard one's heart? What does it look like for you? What do you need to be guarding your heart? Um, yeah, like what does your guard need to be looking for and turning away? So that is all I have for you. As usual, the recipe is down below. Comment, let me know how you're liking the series. I appreciate your time and yeah, your willingness to learn and go deeper with God. And as always, take care, choose joy, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks for the 11th installment of Project 119. Bye. Okay, I gotta get it and turn it off. Get to watch me walk across the room. I should have gotten it before. Bye.